I would like to welcome now my colleague Nikhil Gokhale for the third panel, Driving Innovation in the Digital Era.
Great, thank you so much. I wasn't keeping count per se, but I think one of the most frequently used words across the morning today has been innovation. So, this panel has I would say one of the best topics, and also kind of a responsibility to up the game now that, we've already been talking about innovation already, so let's up the game. So first up, I'm going to invite Vikram Krishna. He is the head of marketing and customer experience at Emirates NBD. He has more than 25 years of experience in marketing, brand management, customer experience, and in sales. Vikram was instrumental in improving the bank's customer experience, making Emirates NBD one of the top customer experience businesses in UAE. One lesser-known side of Vikram, he's extremely passionate about sustainability, and he is using blockchain technology to protect forests from getting depleted. Welcome. I'm going to call on Ian Hodges. He is the head of retail banking at Masraf. He has more than 2 decades of experience in the banking industry and has held several senior level positions across BRAC Bank, Al Hilal Bank, and has been a senior advisor to Etihad Credit Bureau. Ian is someone who truly understands customer needs and is able to offer creative and practical solutions to really meet them. Welcome, Ian. I'm going to call upon Sampath. Sampath is the acting group CTO at First Abu Dhabi Bank. He has more than 25 years of experience in the banking industry and has participated in several large transformation initiatives. He has an enviable track record of successfully completing many complex technology transformations on schedule and within budget. Deserves a round of applause. And in fact, just before the session, I saw Vikram and Sampath sharing notes from their previous stints at Emirates NBD about the war stories. So, in fact, that's what all the innovations is all about. So, welcome, Sampath. And finally, Arun Krishnan. He is the senior vice president and head of engineering at Infosys Finacle. He has 25 years of experience in the product industry. He has held several senior leadership positions in product engineering, business development, as well as program delivery. In his previous roles, Arun foresaw top-tier products at Bell Labs and Microsoft, where he's led teams in very competitive markets, very challenging, technologically very challenging markets. And he is someone who is, again, dedicated to building and fostering innovation, long-term innovation within the organization. Welcome, Arun. On this panel, we have more than 100 years of experience, so I have a lot of brain power to pick on, right? Counting mine, yes, it's going to be more than 120. Thank you. So, let's start with the first question, the burning question. What's innovation? Why is it important in today's world? I know we spoke about customer experience. I know we spoke about the journeys. I know we spoke about the customer need per se specifically, right? So it's driving it to, it's driving innovation at a rapid pace. I would like to, maybe Vikram, you could give us some examples, real life examples, which could help it come alive for the audience.
Yeah, thank you for starting with me. So yeah, I think the point that I was making earlier when we were having our conversation, these are pretty strange times we live in, right? I mean, yesterday the Fed hike of 75 beeps has clearly laid out a roadmap where we're going to go through some fairly trying next 18 months, not just as an industry, but as a global economy as such, right? So when you look at that in context, you will clearly see that institutional trust is going to get challenged. And we are a very large part of that as well, yeah? So the only way we can sort of navigate through these complex times where customer expectations are almost like a moving treadmill is to figure out a way to carve our own path and make a meaningful difference in the decade that lies ahead. And figure out new ways of making a difference in people's lives. So I think that, for me, is a very large context to why, as an industry, we need to innovate, because the economic, social, and political circumstances mandate and drive that. How, if you want me to talk about some examples of innovation, I think the key question I always ask myself is, where is innovation going to come from? Yeah? And what drives of innovation, and who do you need to sort of ask? Yeah? So I'll give you two examples of that. Me being in customer experience, of course, the obvious answer is that innovation starts with the customer. In the bank, there are two interesting examples I would love to share. One is that we have a community of customers called the Better Together community. There are about 3,000 of them, and they're the ones who we reach out to constantly for feedback. They tell us what we can do better. We beta test with them, and then we are able to take things forward. And second is all organizations really need to have a very strong voice of customer program. So we interview about 6,500 customers every month, and they're quite clear in their opinions about what the bank can do better. So in our context, these two really drive our innovation agenda.
Thank you. I'm going to bring you in, Sampath, as well. Of course, if you could help us with some more examples in terms of what is really changing in terms of customer expectations, and maybe what is that one or two innovation in your personal experience that has really helped the bank change, maybe from a business point of view, maybe from a customer experience point of view.
Yeah. Thanks, Nikhil. I think innovation is something which we need to think on a day-to-day basis. It's not something which, I will think 2 months or in a month, I'll think what is about innovation.
It's fine, just hold it.
Yeah, am I audible? Yeah, okay. So innovation is, I think, something which we need to think on a daily basis. It's not that, I will conduct some sort of a program and then, bring a bunch of guys and then say what they're going to talk about innovation, then later on see how we can implement it. It has to be thought by every single person in the organization, not only from tech perspective, even from business perspective. So I think over the past 2-3 years with COVID situation, I think the customer expectation has completely got changed. So their expectation from a digital perspective, how are you going to make things very simple, quick, and also be transparent? Because there are certain things traditionally, I think what we have exposed to customer has been very limited. Now customers are expecting things to be transparent, they want to know more details. And also when they are interacting with an organization with any sort of a service, they're expecting day by day how you are going to make it more simple. How I can perform my sort of interaction with the bank, either doing a transaction or I want to, absorb into a new product or whatever, how many clicks I'm going to do through my mobile banking or internet banking, and how simple that process is going to be. So this is what something which we have been actually seeing, off late, it's changing, especially when a lot of, youth are getting into using your apps. You see the expectations completely differ. So you need to balance between, the generations, how they're using the app. And so what we do across different business areas, I think we we look at what the customers are saying. We look at how the time taken in terms of performing a sort of transaction, and not only from an customer perspective, how you are fulfilling the transaction, right? It's not innovation at the front end, but you also need to look at the complete life cycle of the transaction and where all we are innovating. Because if you don't innovate across all layers, then you are actually not showing a difference to the customer. So what is important is to look at all layers and how do we innovate, how do we automate. We had spoken to a lot of customers, especially, we wanted to see what we can do from a mortgage perspective, what disruption that we can do. And some of the feedback that we have gone from the customers is, we need to know transparently how the process is going to be. We need to know where the process is there. We need to know what sort of pricing, what of charges, what sort of time it's going to take across different processes in a mortgage perspective. So when you look at it from a product by product perspective, I think you need to actively keep looking on a daily basis. Where do I stand? What I need to change? What I need to do so that it becomes easy for the customer, and also it becomes a disruptor in what you want to do. So from an organization perspective, I think we continuously keep looking at the ways to innovate from business process, technology, and even from back-end automation. Yeah.
Perfect. And you started speaking about the enterprise-wide innovation. That actually brings me to you, Ian. When we think of innovation, we tend to first focus on the front end or the front office innovations. The functions which are in touch with customers. But how important is it for banks to think of innovation at an enterprise-wide level? Maybe what are those innovations you think are more important from a middle office and a back office areas?
I think there's one key point. I don't believe we're innovating yet. And I think we're kidding ourselves when we say we are. Because there's a whole industry called fintech. And that's come about because we don't innovate. And if we did innovate, fintech wouldn't exist. And we'd all be sat here in chinos and T-shirts instead of suits and ties. So I do think we need to challenge ourselves. I think we need to be willing to fail. And as bankers, it's ingrained in us not to fail. Your KPI is black and white, pass or fail. And if you fail, you don't get your bonus. 80% of fintechs will fail, probably higher. So I think when we sit here and we talk about innovation, having sat in the DIFC FinTech Hive and other places, they're totally different conversations. They don't start with a core system that means we have to do it this way and then we'll innovate. And I think we've got a real challenge over the next 10 years, because we may not be sat here in 10 years' time. I genuinely believe that. Payments as a service, banking as a service is fundamentally changing what's going on. Do people need banks? The infrastructure is changing. So I just throw that one out there because it's what I'm asking myself. I'm not coming up with too many answers at the minute because we've got constraints and we've got issues and we've got costs. But if we look around us, it's really scary. We do need to learn how to innovate, and therefore that means we need to learn how to fail. So the fact that one of my questions is back office, front office, middle office, how does it integrate, enterprise-wide? Only banks are asking that question. Fintechs don't have a back office. They don't have a middle office. They have a much, much lower cost base. So we've got to attack that and address it. So, when we're looking at enterprise-wide solutions, it's actually that enterprise is the customer. It could be the payment. It's not, well, how do we get it from the core through the middleware into, do we build, do we buy, is it a fintech? I mean, I look at India, and what's going on there is amazing. But how many of us are actually really challenging ourselves to do things differently? If you look at things like KYC, the data's there. I worked in the bureau for 2 years. It's amazing how much data exists in this country with the bureau and EID, Emirates ID. When you use that, but we don't. We go, well, we've got certain rules, and we still need this document, and we still need that document. And I've got to ask the question, why? and I get told, well, this customer could do this on this day, yet it probably happens once or twice a year, so maybe we've just got to accept that when that happens, we lose money. But if we plan to make sure we don't lose money there, we make the whole process bad for everybody else. So I think that's the biggest challenge. I'm very lucky now working in a small bank with a mandate to change and build and grow and challenge the people around the table and try and do something differently. But that's a really hard question to ask because you've got to go to your board and say, okay, there's some risks that we're going to take here. And these are the downsides to it. We've got to acknowledge them. But the upside is we take a quantum leap past the current market leaders, which is what I think the fintechs are doing. So it doesn't quite answer the question, but I think it's the question that we should be asking ourselves.
Thank you. And I think, let me, stay with you then. You said that, 80%, maybe more, 90% of the fintechs could fail. And, maybe banks don't have that luxury. So, what... I
think it's not a luxury. They will fail. There's a bank in the US called Cross River. Some of you may know it. Cross River has decided to become a BaaS provider. It's accepted that it is not going to survive as a bank, so it's become an enabler of third parties to provide banking services. That's innovation. So it's not a luxury,
Makes sense. So, just as a follow-up, right? Should banks be, looking for, being at the forefront of innovation in terms of the first mover advantage, or they should be really looking about how can they make their organizations so agile that they can, once they see a innovation gaining strength, gaining traction, they can quickly implement it. Do you think that's something that banks should be thinking about?
Yeah, I think it's always easier to go second than if somebody else has worked it out and they do it well, then why would you not follow? And I'd be lying if I didn't say I was looking to the two gentlemen to my left, and looking at what they're doing and what their customers like. And we'll take the best of that. My challenge is my customer going to leave them to come to me because I'm doing the same as them? And I think the answer has to be no. So what am I going to do over and above that from an innovation perspective? So where is that opportunity? And that could be that a large bank doesn't take maybe a section of their customers as seriously. That's, if you've got millions of customers, that happens. Or it could be there is a step change in technology, which I think is coming. I think we've cut cost. We've improved process. We talk about clicks, 3 clicks and everything else, but the take-up of digital is so great that there is a quantum change coming. And even then, I'm not sure in a small bank like Masraf, we could be first. Because the risk of getting it wrong is still massive. So as much as I say we need to innovate and take lots of risks, you're still risking the employment of 400 people and your board and your bank if you get it wrong. So I think it's a really, really interesting question. I'd always rather go second. But also the light cores and things like that are coming out of India and companies that are showing scale and low cost of delivery maybe makes those risks easier to take and maybe makes failure easier to box off and sort of learn from it and go again. So I think, I'd love to be first, and we are looking for that thing, but then everybody else in this room is looking for that next great thing. So one of us will find it, and the rest of us will probably follow.
Thank you. I think that's as candid as you can get, right? I'm going to get you in, Arun, from a technology point of view, right? I touched upon it in my earlier question. How do you make sure that you as an organization, you as a bank, is ready to innovate, to embrace innovation quickly, be it first mover or be it second mover? So what are those components that, from a technology point of view, that a bank should already have in place so that they are able to innovate quickly and very agilely, if that's a word?
Yeah. First of all, thank you for the opportunity. We have the privilege, I would say, of working with really excellent clients. And I think our source of inspiration actually comes from all of what you do. What I'm about to share is really just learnings from a lot of our clients and how they think. So what we have learned is the really successful clients that we have a, I would say, a structured methodology to going after innovation. So it's not just about the next, it's almost like 3 different kinds of innovation that they clearly recognize. One is really to go after who they serve today, but really do it really, really well. I mean, one could imagine these are clients that they're over-serving already, but they really want to deepen that relationship. So that's one kind of innovation that we see. The second we see, I'm sorry, I would rephrase that. It's underserving the clients, and that's what I meant. They have good relationships, but they feel they can do more. The second is actually the kind that they're over-serving. Ian, you mentioned that. Somebody coming in and saying there's a large set of clients, but there's a small section that's being over-served. Too much stuff. And I think Emirates NBD, when you launched Live, for example, is a great example of that, peeling off that segment that you said you wanted to do very differently. And you could just shed some of the old baggage, if you will. And there's a third kind that is completely disruptive, going after a new market. And usually we find our clients in one of those 3 buckets. And what we've found is when they're clear about that, then the rest of it starts to follow really nicely. And it's not one or the above, it depends on what situation they're in. The second question that they have is the what. What do we do? Their things, I think, tend to become a little more, more homogeneous. Just a matter of emphasis. What we're finding as themes are essentially elasticity is a theme, and you've heard that about cloud. Just being ready to handle the kind of scale and speed. Even if we make mistakes, let's sort of recover fast, have the ability to do it. I'll give UPI in India as an example. We were just completely caught unawares. Our clients were caught unawares. The kind of scale that we saw, I mean, we have some 260 million accounts. Just the jump in transactions was so much. The cost of processing each payment exceeded the value of the transaction. And so that just changes the economics. So we had to really talk about innovation under pressure, right? So scale is the first thing that I would want to point out. The second is really simplifying, extracting enterprise components. One of the fallouts of building, I would say, really custom-built solutions that are great and delightful, we have integrated all the components. So then we're unable to respond to these new clients. So I think just focusing on enterprise components and extracting them. And the third, I would say, is taking a platform approach to creating intimate experiences. These are the 3 themes that we see have emerged. And the emphasis differs, I would say, depending on different clients. But that has really been the theme. There's one last point I would mention, the how. And that is also important. It is about we're moving from a highly dependent, independent world to an interdependent world. And that fundamentally alters the DNA of banks. We're used to working in LOBs with having targets. I think this is going to be probably more disruptive to enable innovation in a bank than the technology itself. And of course, the technology is not going to be a small, gradual change.
So, being able to compose different solutions on the fly.
So I want to be careful about using the word compose. I think we have heard a lot of words like compose, coreless, and I'm trying to carefully stay away from that because each person tries to define it and we will try to define it our own way. But really the essence is looking at the banking solution space not from the perspective of the bank's ability to deliver, but stop for a second and look at the consumer experience. I'll take a very, very simple example. Take something like service request, for example. If that functionality is replicated in every LOB, chances are consumer is going to have a very inconsistent experience. It's a very simple thing to extract. And really that's an example of recomposing, if you will, the banking solution from the perspective of the consumer. And there are many such functions in a typical bank. I would say something like about 80 functions. And that provides the opportunity to extract those, take a consumer-centric view, again, based on the strategy that the bank has, and prioritize those elements and really rebuild.
I think it reminded me of the point that was made earlier, which was looking at a consumer, not as as a personal consumer and a commercial consumer, but looking at a consumer as one, and what are the different needs of that. So I think makes sense. So I'm going to come back to you, Vikram. Okay, innovation is probably not waiting for that one big thing to happen and change the world, but it's more like a continuous process. It's more these small little improvements, changes, incremental if you will, but also from a customer point of view, and making sure that they fit together to create something big, right? So my question to you would be, how do you actually spot these innovations? Where do you spot these innovations? Should you be depending outside your organization, within your organization, and how do you basically compose the program of innovation?
I think it's a very interesting question, and I'll address it in a few parts. Yeah, I think the first is what is your organization's culture, and how is it defined, and does that encourage those millions of decisions that we take every day, which are by humans or it's automated as well? Are those aligned to what we really want to do and what's important? Right? So at the bank, for example, we work very hard to define, what is our culture? What does it mean, right? So for us, it's all about creating opportunities to prosper, and that's something that's defined more so with how do we collaborate better, how do we take ownership, how do we drive, our agenda forward and show the enterprise that's necessary. Yeah? So I think one aspect of that is how are you defining your culture and investing in it so that, we can say whatever you want to in a conference, but when you pick up the phone and speak to a call center agent or you walk up to a branch, yeah, that's your culture in action. That's your innovation in play, right? I mean, I need some work to be done now, and bank, please make sure it's done, yeah? So I think that's one very important part. Second is about how are you energizing the organization to celebrate that culture? And are you giving that purpose some kind of a meaning? So, for example, we work very hard in appreciating our staff. So anybody who does a good job, we do some storytelling around it, create some heroes. So the entire organization starts reflecting on the fact that we know what's important, we know what innovation means for the organization, and we also love to celebrate those who are able to deliver that successfully. Yeah. Third is, giving it some sense of a larger purpose. So, for example, today we are in a digital conference, right? So, and many people speak about mobile banking, and it's important to deliver that agenda forward. But what we also need to realize as bankers is that we are a part of a larger ecosystem, and how we're influencing it. Yeah. So, if you just talk about mobiles, 5.5 billion mobiles are going to go into the landfill this year, and the bad news is 16 billion are in the pipeline for next year and the year after. Yeah. So what we as an industry need to understand, and perhaps that's where the fintechs are stealing a march on us, is we are too narrow cast in terms of what we're doing. Yeah? We're just focusing on the mobile and the experience around it. Or we're focusing on digitization. So digitization, if I were to just talk about digital waste, yeah, there'll be digital waste this year, the size and the weight of the Great Wall of China. Yeah, what are we doing? Why are we generating this kind of waste? How can we, as an organization, as an industry, encourage people to become a much more holistic, circular, cohesive, So I think when you define innovation and you want people to take those incremental decisions every day, yeah, then culture, purpose, direction, and a larger sense of what is our role in the overall ecosystem, and how can we influence that successfully, I think that's important from my perspective.
Right. Right. I actually saw you nodding your head along when he was speaking about, celebrating and acknowledging. So, anything to add, in terms of how do you actually make sure that, the innovations is not something that is, something that is only responsibility of the chief innovation officer, but making sure that it is part of the DNA of the bank.
See, I think it's a mindset change. It's a mindset change across the organization that we need to look at things in a different way. And, as Vikram said, that we need to give opportunity for people to come and try something. We need to, take that fearless sort of an, attitude with people that, if I fail something, am I going to be penalized? While we celebrate for success, which is very important, that you need to encourage people so that they come and, do new things and then celebrate the success. At the same time, we should take care of the people who innovate and then does not become a success, right? That's the only way you can get more and more people, get engaged, more and more people to be part of this. And as I said, it should not be restricted within certain areas of an organization. It should be across the organization, starting with, either from, as he said, the culture change of how do we want to actually instill this across the organization, which are the different stakeholders in, or how do we bring them together, how do you communicate. I think the biggest challenge which we do is so many things, so many people do so many things, but the communication of what is happening, how do we make people aware about what's happening? That's the biggest thing. Sometimes it's constrained within a certain area of the organization and you don't get to know what the others are doing. So the platform to create that communication and make sure that everyone is aware of what's happening. So once you start appreciating the people who are contributing to this, and also once you start supporting the people who are failing and they can come forward eagerly next time and then try the same thing, and make people aware that this is the environment, this is the ecosystem, this is the platform that we are establishing. And on top of it, I think culture change is, I think, one of the very key aspects, right? Without a culture change, then it's going to be very difficult. And when you have large organizations where, you have a large section of crowd which is outsourced, large section of breed which is insourced, and you have, mix of, people coming from across, consultants working on it, employees working on it. I think there's a various mixed bag of people in the organization. And how do we bring in that culture across this varied set of people and make sure that everyone is aligned and thinking on the same way? I think that's very, very important, and creating an communication platform in which this can be, communicated to people, the success can be published, appreciated. This will actually bring a lot in terms of changing the mindset. So once the mindset is changed and the ecosystem is available, then the productivity automatically comes. You don't need to do anything. It just becomes a part of the culture to come and try, change, and then make people aware about it. And a simple high five will make people happy. You don't need to do anything big things. Very, very small things will make a big difference in what we are doing.
Makes sense. And, it's interesting how we so beautifully veered from, in a topic of innovation, we beautifully veered, not just talking about technology, but also about the people side of it. I think balanced scorecard is something that Sanjeev spoke about earlier in the day, and how it beautifully linked back there. I'm going to come to you, Ian, next. When you talk about innovations could bring about risks which were previously not even there in the picture, right? So I know we spoke about how to be fearless with innovations, how to make sure that it's okay to fail. Out of 10, 9 innovations could fail. That's perfectly fine. But at the same time, if we look at the other side of innovation, which is risk for a bank, which previously perhaps did not even exist. How do you, as a bank, how do you go about making sure you think about these risks proactively and find ways to mitigate them?
So I think all of the risks have always existed. So as bankers, be it KYC, governance, financial risk, I think they're there. I think data is key on this. We have an awful lot of information in our organizations now, And there's so much of it that there are key risk decisions that I think are supported by really good data. I think AI will help greatly with that in terms of false positives and things like that. How do you take these out so that we spend our time looking at the core decisioning? And that's something that we're sort of challenging ourselves with now. I think there's huge opportunities with, particularly if you take a country like the UAE, which is as digitized as it is, the opportunities to use that data, to use the biometrics. UAE Pass, for example, is amazing, and you get new people coming into this market who think it's, they've never seen anything like it. You don't get things like that in the UK, in Europe, and yet I can sign into multiple things just by biometrics, UAE Pass, and I'm making a payment. And I think there's many more opportunities coming from risk innovation than there are challenges. I don't actually think our risks are different. I think they're more immediate. The previous panel was talking about speed of payment. I think that's a huge challenge that very few of us have come to terms with yet. We love the fact that the payment is instant or pretty quick, but actually, can we hold it back for a couple of hours so that we can check? And the customer's saying, but you told me it was instant. The central bank is saying it's instant. And why do we need more time to check? And for a period of time, I think we will do, but I think that using the technology that's available, using the access to external sources of data, not just internal, I think there's a point at which banks have to share. I think banks have to share. There's a common goal here of a fraud-free, fast payment environment. We all win from that. The customer wins massively, but do we share our data? As soon as there's a fraud, why isn't it populated somewhere? And I think that's something that we as an industry can take on. That's got nothing to do with technology, but our challenge is the speed with which things are happening means it's more and more important that we can share. When I first got here in 2008, you could phone somebody in another bank and go, we've got a problem, the payment's on its way, and at the other end it had already been stopped. Those things aren't happening anymore, but actually the technology allows us to protect each other. And I think we can do that, and that enables us to protect our customers. If you look at Italy, there's a credit bureau that isn't government-based. It's companies sharing payment data from their providers, and they've built this whole business and infrastructure so that when you as a company do business, you protect yourselves, because we protect ourselves on our payments. But actually, many more payments take place between organizations. And so I think there's lots of things we can do to leverage technology. I'm actually, for me, I think it's a really empowering part of where we are and innovation. I think risk and our ability to positively manage risk to the benefit of customer, bank, industry, country is potentially a game changer. And that's where, I think that's one area where the banks have a big advantage, because we already have the customers, we already have the data, and maybe we shouldn't be so sort of tight around it.
Sharing is caring.
It is when you haven't got many customers.
Right. I think we are the only ones stopping people from going for their lunch. So what I'm going to do is now do a rapid fire, 30 seconds or 60 seconds, where we talk about what is that one innovation or that one technology that you think would be the talk of the town come 2025. I'm going to start with you, Arun, and then come this way.
Okay, I'm going to mention two. So one, I think, is here and now, and I think it will be much more the talk, which is basically cloud. And if any of you has not really invested a lot, I think that is going to fundamentally change in the next few months. The second, I think, that holds a lot of potential is injecting ML, machine learning, into creating engaging experiences. These are the two things that I think will be the talk of the town in 2025.
You've taken the easy ones, I would say, so it's going to put more pressure on the other panelists. But if you want to elaborate further within AI and ML, please be my guest. Ian.
I think for me it's blockchain. And that ability for banks to share common data around KYC, around fraud, around those areas. So I think there's the technology's there, and I don't think it'll be at it'll be sort of a closed blockchain of banks working together. We're seeing DED do it already on trade license. I think there's a huge opportunity for us to agree between each other how to make this data safe and secure, to share it, and to empower each other. So I think that's something that could be leveraged.
Perfect. Sampath?
I think from my perspective, one is I think there will be a lot of new things will come on customer identity. See, how do we identify customer across universally across organizations? And second, especially in UAE, I think there will be a big leap in terms of open banking and open APIs, which is I think at a very nascent stage here that will really leap up in the next couple of years.
Thank you. Vikram?
So I'm not a fan of one technology. So I think technology solutions that help us in improving our environment and helping us battle climate change, which is here for all of us to endure. So this was the best summer in your life. Second, which helps us create a more inclusive society. And third, technology that helps us govern better. Whatever mixing deck of technologies can do that well will be the winner.
Thank you. With that, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to open for audience questions. Do we have a clock? Or let's take maybe we are a little okay. So on behalf of the panel, what I will say is all of us are here. If you have any burning question, please do not hesitate to walk up to any one of us and ask the question. I think we, as a panel, we were able to look at a completely different dimension of innovation, peel the onion a little bit and figure out, okay, how do you actually implement it? What are the risks around it? How can you actually help each other as banks and get better as the industry? So thank you so much, panelists. This was indeed a very insightful session. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.